one of our favorite journalists here at the Vanguard, that's Mr. Aaron Mate. He called out Ken Klippenstein, who's now working at The Intercept. And this was a little bit interesting. I wanted to get your guys' reaction to it. So we can start from the top here. I'm not sure who this is, Yasha Levine. This person is kind of calling out Ken Klippenstein, I guess, for not talking enough about the billionaire benefactor of The Intercept. And Ken replies and said, I mostly cover national security. I think this week's Amazon stories are the only tech ones I've done. And obviously, shout out to Ken Klippenstein's recent reporting on Amazon. He's done really good work over there at The Intercept in exposing them and their knowledge of, workers pissing in bottles and shitting in bags, essentially. So this
obvious worker exploitation for anybody who needs a translation.
Yeah, exactly. Here's some, this is kind of irrelevant, but it gets into the Russia thing. And Ken says, there's a much simpler reason I've never covered Russia stuff. It's boring. And of course, he's kind of talking about the whole Russiagate thing. And, it is true that he's been pretty silent on that. He doesn't really seem to have much of an opinion as far as, like, is Russiagate a legitimate, news story or not, a legitimate conspiracy theory or whatever. And Aaron Mate, who of course has not been at all a stranger to that scandal, jumps in and says, PSA, no one is obligated to cover Russia stuff, but don't rationalize saying zilch on this pivotal and destructive story by claiming it's quote unquote boring. It's in fact a third rail. To illustrate, had you covered it properly, you wouldn't be allowed to work at Kool-Aid drinking Intercept. So Aaron Mate is taking a fat shot at Ken and The Intercept. And this is actually the, maybe second or third shot I've seen Mate take at Klippenstein on Twitter. So he clearly has a bit of a beef brewing with this fellow reporter. Certainly an interesting little exchange here. And I don't think he's been directly responded to by Klippenstein, but clearly trying to get his attention. So I was just wondering if either of you guys had any immediate reaction to this. And do you think it's fair for Mate to call out Klippenstein in this instance?
Yeah, I'll jump in and then I'll pass the ball to Kamali for a second, because I just wanted to say this. I think that I've seen Aaron Mate go on Jimmy Dore's show a lot and be like, and push back on him when he says that anybody who writes for a publication that like forces their reporters to, fall in a line, he's like, hey, people have to put food on their family's table, like they have to pay their rent. Like, I've seen him do that pushback, right? When a lot of journalists who, have themselves experienced, trouble in the industry because of their positions and their coverage, they often are more harsh and prickly about the subject matter. And I think that the reason that Aaron Mate takes beef with Ken Klippenstein is because he's kind of skyrocketing to a high profile right now. And Aaron Mate sees him as like hiding from an obvious fucking elephant in the room, which is Russiagate, where all of the high profile people in this space who personally I think are really authentic, and even if I have problems with them at times, people like Glenn Greenwald was after this early, obviously we're big fans of Matt Taibbi's work on the show. These people who had platforms, who took risks, who said, what, fuck you, I am going to cover this. I think he sees it as disrespectful to them to have Ken Klippenstein, this guy who's rising to extreme prominence, taking a cushy job at The Intercept after Glenn Greenwald got booted, making jokes about it on Twitter, not coming to Glenn's defense, not doing these kinds of things to stand up. And like I said, we cover Ken Klippenstein's reporting. He does a lot of good work. I'm not saying that the guy's a bad journalist, but it's definitely obvious that what Aaron's upset about is the fact that he's putting career over profession.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, Aaron Mate is definitely right on this, to try to, claim that this is just a boring story. There's nothing boring about the idea of your newspaper, the newspaper or the outlet that you work for taking, a large, chunk of its money and relying heavily on a powerful, wealthy donor. There's absolute for Ken Klippenstein covers all the time and tries to expose people for, different, financial, misdealings that people have. And it's absolutely, we definitely have, as the, on the left, we have an analysis of an issue of money in politics and the fact that money, the influence of money in politics and the idea that money doesn't influence us outside of politics, outside, the direct like electoral system is just foolish. Of course it does. And we have to ask those questions. There's nothing boring about this story. And so for Ken Klippenstein, who I have tons of respect for. Ken Klippenstein, as you said, Zach, he's a good investigative journalist. He does great work. He's kind of well known for like doing these really amazing FOIA requests, like Freedom of Information Act, and he just knows how to work the FOIA system, because you as a public citizen, and this isn't good information for us all to know, is that we all have the ability to request this information to be made public through this Freedom of Information Act, and he knows how to the tricks of the trade in order to secure that information. So he's constantly putting.
He also has a lawyer that'll fucking sue the government if they don't give him the FOIA request.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And sure. To sum up Russia, the Russia story as boring, I think that Aaron Mate takes it as a slight, because he covers the Russia story, but from the angle of the left, in highlighting how that Russia story, as boring as the story itself might be,
and he risked his whole career. He's permanently blacklisted from any mainstream outlet, right? He had to hustle hard as shit, and I believe it's because of some connections that who was the lady that ran the Intercept, or not the Intercept, sorry, the Nation before Didi Gutenplant. She was married to Stephen Cohen. Gosh,
sure.
What's her name?
Not
sure. Katrina von Hoovel. She was very tight with Aaron Mate. I imagine she may have had something to do with getting the Nation to finally publish his shit there. This is all speculation, by the way. I don't know. But I'm just saying, no other fucking publication would touch it, right? And the Nation did, and finally they did. But outside of that, he was just relegated to the gray zone, which is a great outlet, but not a lot of people see it because it's been fucking smeared, and Max Blumenthal and Ben Norton and all those guys have been fucking vilified by the mainstream press, and
not just vilified, but they're literally like deranked on like Wikipedia and stuff. Like
you can't cite anything that any of them have ever written anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
On Wikipedia, it's fucking crazy.
It's gross.
And also, I just want to say too, as one last thing on this subject, Clint Klippenstein's not entirely wrong. The whole Russiagate thing was fucking boring, which is a big part of the reason why it was a failure. No one gave a shit about it because it was too intricate. It was too conspiratorial. It sounded like something from a 1950s fucking Cold War spy thriller. The only people that it captivated was my fucking grandpa watching MSNBC. It was boring, and that's why it didn't work.
No, and that's the thing. The story itself was boring. What wasn't boring and what shouldn't be boring to us is the story of what they were using that story to do, which is to distract us all from the actual, real shit that was impacting the society.
And why Hillary Clinton lost, why the Democrats lost to a reality show fucking clown. That's why they had to, invent or at least highly exaggerate all of those details in order to spin this wild conspiracy theory.